Shabbat Shalom. So, growing up in Wisconsin, that gets a laugh right there already, just Wisconsin. Wow. There's something that no child misses in Wisconsin is a chance to go trick-or-treating on Halloween. Everyone does it. There's really not that much else to do. And so one of the things every year is, as you get older, just how long can you stretch it? Are you too old to go out trick-or-treating? And one year, two of my friends and I, we thought we were in high school, but we thought we could still go. And it turns out that people don't take so kindly to three men over 6 feet dressed in black showing up to their home. So we quickly abandoned our trick-or-treating plan and tried to think of what else we could do with our evening. And what we came up with was that my friend had a very long driveway. Gavin, that's like in between your house and the road. There's a long stretch. And we put at the end of the driveway a little table with a basket full of candy and a sign that said, "Please only take one." And we then proceeded to hide. I was in a pile of leaves that we had raked up right next to the table, and my one friend was in the bushes and the other was in the trees, and we waited. And we waited and waited for someone to come who would take more than one. And we waited for a long time. This is Wisconsin after all. People are rule followers. But finally, we got to this point, and two kids showed up, and we heard them fighting. And one said, "Hey, let's just take it all." And the other kid said, "No, come on, it says take one, let's only take one. We're getting all kinds of candy." And the other one, this went back and forth. "No, but there's no one around. We could do it all." And they fought back and forth until finally, the goofus of the two, Gavin, you're too young to know what that is, but the one who wanted to take more won out, and he said, "No, we're gonna do it." And he grabbed the whole basket. And as he grabbed the whole basket, my friend in the tree said, "You should have taken just one." And I jumped out of the leaves. And I was reminiscing about this. I talked him out of using the hose, but we did, I believe water balloons were involved, and I'm not gonna say more than that. So in this moment, I have to say, even retelling it, it felt like we were doing the right thing. We were the angels of righteousness in this moment. Now, any other time, three young adults hiding and ambushing children, yelling at them and throwing water balloons would be not so good. But they had taken more than one candy. And because they violated this rule, it felt like whatever we did there, we were the heroes. They were the villains. And there are many moments in our lives where we want there to be clear villains and heroes. And there are many moments in this week's Parsha where the rabbis work hard to make it look very black and white. Because I have to say, it doesn't always, just from a straight read of the Torah, look so black and white. What did the people of Sodom and Gomorrah do that merited the entire wiping out of their two cities? We don't know. We just know that they were sinners, the Rabbi Ukveda, that their sins were great and their sins were numerous. That's what we're told. And the rabbis then go to work explaining precisely what the sins of the people of these towns were. That meant that they all had to be destroyed. And they range. They wouldn't share their wealth. They were kind of rude to strangers. They were idolaters. They were murderers. They were, and so on and so on. The rabbis outdo themselves to try and describe the horrible things that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah would do. And why do the rabbis do this? Because they're trying to make us feel not 1 inch of sympathy for the doomed citizens of these towns. They were bad, they were sinners, and so surely they deserved whatever they got. After Sodom and Gomorrah, there's a more personal story that's told, but no less icky. Sarah and her son Isaac are in the same house as Ishmael and his mother Hagar. Now, we don't know much about the dynamics of this modern family, but we know that at one point, at a party, Sarah sees Ishmael mitzachek, playing, sporting, mitzachek, whatever that word means, with Yitzchak, with Isaac, and immediately turns to her husband and says, you have to banish this man, this kid, as well as the mother who bore him. Kick them out. And Avraham, after a little bit of back and forth with God, does it and kicks the boy and his mother out into the desert with no water. So again, is there anything, I would ask you, is there anything that this young boy could have done that would make us feel okay about him being sent off to die along with his mother? The rabbis look back at this word mitzachek because the whole thing hinges on that. And again, just like at Sodom and Gomorrah, they go out of their way. Oh, he was mocking Isaac. No, he was mocking Sarah. No, he was teaching Isaac idolatry. No, he was trying to kill him. He was trying to kill Isaac, and therefore Sarah was completely justified. She had to do whatever she needed to do in order to protect her son, even if it meant sending 2 people out to their death. This goes on and on and on in this parsha. This parsha is built on uncertainties. Why did Lot's wife turn around? Why did that mean she had to be turned into a pillar of salt? Why does Abraham keep saying that Sarah is his sister and continue to get into trouble with the different kings that he's with again and again? In some ways, this fact that we're trying to find evil in the people who get punished in this parsha, it's not a bad thing. It shows that we are looking for moral absolutes. It shows that we're uncomfortable with random violence. There was an article now maybe a few months ago about violence in movies and how, for the most part, in the movies that we watch, the villains really have to be bad. They really have to be horrible people in order for us, the viewer, to root for Liam Neeson as he goes and uses his special set of skills, or whatever is happening. That we need the villains, that we don't like gray in our villains. We want them to be black and white. And this article said that is a sign of the discomfort our society feels towards violence. And again, that's a good thing. But like everything, it isn't without its problems. Because while it is cathartic to let loose this righteous anger and to let it out and feel like, yeah, those people over there, they are wholly wrong, and I can defeat them or fight them in any way that I can or see fit, I think that mindset is often more harmful than helpful. Because when we draw lines that divide those worthy of being saved and those whose sins are beyond the pale, we allow for a dehumanization to occur. The idea that there is something Ishmael could have done that meant that he and his mother deserved to die is an insidious way of allowing ourselves to go beyond the moral. The attitude is a problem in our society as well. In many ways, I think it might be the root of something for which many symptoms we see today. The polarization in our culture is often based on the idea that there are some things, some positions one could hold on an issue that could only be held by a crazy person or a horrible person or one of them. Those people out there who think that thing that none of us ever would. We're guilty of this, by the way, on both sides of the aisle. There are many issues, whatever it is, healthcare, pro-choice, guns, incarceration, the environment, etc. The idea that anyone who believes that side of the issue must be racist, selfish, bloodthirsty, dumb, etc. This is the problem. Because when one's views on a particular issue serve to isolate them from others, when we create all these lines in the sand to see who's on which side and then draw the boundaries, we create the ideal breeding ground for polarization, for antagonism, for hatred, and even the violence that we see today. Beyond the world of politics, this us versus them mentality of which if you're on the wrong side of this, then I get to mock you, I get to denigrate you, I get to even hurt you. It's serious and it's dangerous. And we owe it to ourselves and our society to try to turn down the volume just a notch, to alleviate the pressures on these issues, allow the borders to be a little more porous. The world can rarely be divided into two categories of people, and while there may be definite rights and wrongs in our world, very seldom is one person completely on the side of the wrong or on the side of the right. There are days when there is absolute right and wrong, but those days too often involve body counts. Now in the Mishnah, 2,000 years ago, Hillel saw this problem coming. He exhorts each and every one of us. He says, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, do not separate yourself from the community. Don't create divisions within the community. If you find yourself saying, I hold this thing and everyone else must be wrong, absolutely, 100%, how could anybody think this? I'm in my community of one over here, and they, with a capital T, are in their community of wrong believers over there. Hillel says we owe it to ourselves to take a step back and to think. He says, Ve'al te'amen ba'atzmecha ad yom motcha. Don't believe in yourself completely until the day of your death. One can never be sure. One can never be sure completely of what they believe, so be careful before you vent your righteous anger so freely, he says. Now this leads him to say something perhaps we've all heard before, Ve'al tadin et chavracha et tagia lemikomo. And do not judge your fellow until you arrive in their place. There's an old joke, before you judge someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes, because then you're a mile away and you have their shoes. But what Hillel is talking about here, where the phrase originates from, and while it might be a little bit trite, it's incredibly important to understand that no matter what beliefs or actions a person holds, most of the time, they have a reason. And their reasons are not simply based on being stupid, bad people. And it is incumbent on us, Hillel says, to try and understand why people hold the views that they hold, because he concludes this saying by saying, V'al tamar devar she'i efshar lishmoa, shesofo lahashmiya. He says, and don't say that there's something which can never ever be understood, for eventually everything will be understood. There are people in the world who have beliefs that I cannot comprehend. I'll admit that. But before I pass judgment on them, Hillel says it is my job to think, well, there's got to be a reason. I want them to be a part of my community. I don't want to judge them flat out, and so there must be something I'm not understanding. And it is my job, again, before letting loose the fire and brimstone that comes from the heroes and the villains, it's my job to think about, well, maybe they're not such villains after all, or at least they have a reason or something. So much of our tradition, anyone who has studied with me or the rabbis here, we know that so much of what we do in Judaism is to balance values that are in tension. I have the value of resting on Shabbat. I have the value of visiting the sick. Well, put the two together. When can I go? How do I get to visit the person who's ill on Shabbat? etc., etc., etc. If the Talmud teaches us anything, it's that when we come to debate, we're coming with very real values, with very real ideas, and everyone in the room cares about the future of our people. Everyone in the room cares about the future of the world, though perhaps we disagree on the best way to move forward. So the Parsha here reminds us we can't always be so sure. V'al ta'amin ba'atzmecha. You can't always rely on yourself so much to know who's right and who's wrong with such impunity that you would let loose your righteous anger, as good as it might feel, to judge others. How much better would our world be if Sarah and Hagar, instead of judging one another, instead of fighting one another, had taken a few moments, had taken a few months, had taken a few years to work things out, and if Ishmael and Yitzchak and the religions that these two men would birth had been raised not in separate homes, with one having tried to kill the other, or perhaps both having tried to kill the other, but to be raised in the same house, and their descendants raised in the same house. The lesson of this parsha is that we shouldn't be so sure of ourselves, and that our often large actions hinge on misunderstandings. Let us endeavor in the weeks to come to heed the words of Hillel and not divide our communities, hold healthy self-doubt, try to understand our fellows before passing judgment, and know that no matter how unclear something may seem to us today, shesofo lahashmiya, eventually, please God, we will come to understand each other. Shabbat shalom.